Hi, I'm Alek Gross. I'm the head of sports science and first team fitness coach at Southampton Football Club. How we come up with our nutrition plans for each of the players, I guess firstly it's to acknowledge that it's a we rather than a me. The nutrition plan is derived from a number of sources and a number of people really. It needs to be periodised and personalised, so it needs to meet the training and match demands, and also any individual objectives that a player might have. That might be, for instance, increased muscle mass or reduced body fat. It could be based around some specific performance needs around we need someone to be able to repeatedly sprint a little bit more than they're currently doing. And it also needs to be based around some other aspects which are often overlooked, such sort of cultural issues, religious issues, medical issues, and then also like real simple individual food preferences. It's something that the players do every day, and if we're forever pushing things at them that they don't like or they don't want to eat, then it's not going to work. In essence, every player will have an individual plan. You might have a player who knows what they should be eating, but maybe they can't cook, so their plan will look slightly different. You might have a player who's been injured, so their plan will look slightly different to someone else's in terms of the quantity of food that they're having, maybe the supplements that they're having. So we've got members of the squad who have got good knowledge, they're very competent in terms of cooking for themselves, they make the right choices, they frequently take the supplements that we need them to take. They're good post-match at night games. Those people might get a little less input. We'll just stay across them and make sure they've got no additional questions. Where at the other end of the scale, we might have younger players who have recently moved out to live by themselves. They've got no real idea about what to cook, how to cook it, when to eat it. So they might get a little bit more additional support. We've got health supplements which are pretty consistent. So things like probiotics, gut health, multivitamins, omega-3s for immune function, cognitive function. Those remain pretty standard across the board because we need all players to be healthy. From a performance perspective, there's some slightly different aspects on that depending on what we need that player to do. So, for instance, we might use beta-alanine or creatine if we have certain players that are working or have more of an emphasis on force development, or we might have more of an emphasis on general fitness, and they might have a slightly more of an emphasis on things such as iron. So we'll assess their iron deficiencies in the blood, electrolyte, to support sort of hydration and aerobic capacity. Yeah, the UEFA nutrition paper for football's actually it's a really good paper. Whilst it's not necessarily new research as such, it consolidates all the relevant information from a range of sources. So instead of having to read 300 papers, you kind of got it consolidated into one paper. And it's obviously been produced by sort of the world leading nutritionists, so it definitely informs our practice, and it'd be silly not to. And it's all useful around improving performance and preventing risk of injury and illness and recovering from injury and illness. So there's different sections that are really pertinent to what we do and either inform our practice in some new elements, but by and large it sort of reinforces the practices that we currently undertake. And there's quite a clear section or contents around what supplements are useful and when to use them. I think it's quite difficult for athletes, players, general consumers to understand what's good, what's not, what's safe and what's not. And I think that section's really useful in terms of clarifying an area that's relatively murky. One of the things that I found really useful is there's a section on cultural and religious impact on nutritional planning around supporting players through Ramadan. And whilst there's a relatively small section on that, it does signpost some really good papers that are specifically dealing with that area. So a lot of the paper is based on scientific knowledge and information. I think a key area of what we try and do in our areas, we need players to move from something they've done to something they've not done before. So elements of behaviour change and how you get people to change thoughts, beliefs and behaviours isn't in the paper. So you kind of need that alongside the knowledge if you're going to get a well-rounded nutrition plan, I think. There's more information, the available information, whether it be social media or internet, that articles online. There's people on GMTV or whatever is spouting information about gluten-free diet or vegetarian diet or keto diet or whatever it might be. So the players have probably got a lot more questions than they used to have, and they probably want to try a diverse range of things, and that's fine. I think that's all part of a healthy nutrition plan. That rather than potentially before being that's what you need to eat, just eat it and comply. It needs to be more of a general conversation around, all right, if you, for instance, gluten-free diets have become more popular. So what are the options that we need to put on in terms of a club in order to allow you to follow your preference, in order for you to perform? So that's something that we work with the chef and the nutritionist in order to supply and support. We've got people from Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Africa, South America, all with different habits and preferences and expectations on what nutrition should look like. And again, that's something where, like, just embrace that. Speaking with the players, what is their preference? If we need to take it from a point of preference to something that we think is more suitable for performance, then we'll do that. And again, take the player on the journey with you rather than going, we don't do that here, you just do this. I just don't think, as alluded to about that behaviour change, that's not how you encourage healthy and long-lasting behaviour change. You need to educate and, where possible, support players with their existing preferences. What does tend to change is sort of the macronutrients, and we have to balance the energy in with the energy out. So quite simply, on days where we have higher training demand, the intake of energy via food needs to match that. At the minute, we've got a lot of fixtures, so we need to make sure that our sort of glycogen stores are topped up and maintained. So with not much gap between fixtures, even on a light recovery day, it's sort of a time to prepare for the following fixture. So that impacts a little bit on the food choices that our players make. Some of the things that, again, that might change is the protein selection in and around fixtures. So immediately prior to games, we'll avoid red meat and look at other sources of protein which are easy to digest and more effective for performance. And then evening kickoffs, we have to move away from what you would probably term or determine as a meal, and we have a lot more snack-based nutrition options that are nutritionally dense, especially post-matches in the evenings, where we've found subjectively players struggle to eat what would be termed as a traditional meal. So we need to have snacks that are easy to consume, that players enjoy, and that are palatable, which allows us to accelerate that recovery between games. Ultimately, our strategy and our philosophy is food first. So we try to get all our nutritional requirements through normal food, but sometimes it's not possible. Like I say, during periods of fixed congestion, or the food options are suboptimal, so they don't actually provide what we need. So we do have to supplement with it. I think I've covered sort of the health perspective, the probiotics, multivitamins, omega-3s that are consistent. In periods where we have more fixtures, there'll be a higher emphasis on loading beta-alanine and creatine prior to that period and throughout that period. We obviously have a greater push on hydration and electrolytes and how that can support through periods of fixture congestion. I think there's other elements of pre-match or on game day. We see an increase in the use of caffeine-based products, whether that be via drinks or chewing gums or different mediums. And that's something we need to be aware of. So obviously caffeine needs to have you need to have an optimized intake rather than a maximized intake in terms of the caffeine. So make sure we stay across what people are taking, so they're not having too much when we're having too many games in a period of time, in a short period of time. And then, like I say, the recovery aspect is high on the agenda through periods of fixed congestion. So elements we look to, in addition to the sort of the calorie dense snacks post matches, we'll also have. We always use them anyway, but more of a push on our recovery shakes post training and post matches. So it's more of a combination of carb and protein. We'll have a greater push on some of our polyphenol based drinks, so sort of cherry based drinks for recovery. And then also some of our, especially post-night game, and also through periods where we've got a high amount of fixtures or a high amount of training, such as pre-season, we probably use we do use a little bit more casein-based products. So, and some of the night protein, whether that be a shake or a hot chocolate-based drink that we will use to try and accelerate that recovery between games. And those are things that either are easier options or that accelerate recovery over and above what we think we can achieve through food alone. Again, we have to cater for the needs of the players. So some players want to just know hard facts and information. So something that we might use is our blood markers, our biomarkers, or our body comp assessments, which again will indicate maybe a bit D deficiency or a zinc deficiency, whatever that might be, and that might inform their supplementary practice. So it's good that they've got hard facts in order to support that. And we try and generally educate players, formally or informally, so that whether that be individual conversations with Dan, the nutritionist, informally through members of the science and medicine team, whether that be members of the kitchen staff and front of house kitchen staff that see the players on a daily basis, they might try and nudge their practices, and they're actually quite useful. So in terms of our daily supplementation, we kind of have like a Healthspan pill pot, for want of a better word, that's labelled up. It goes behind the food counter on a daily basis. So the players come in for food, and they'll be handed over their individual packet of supplements for that day. Obviously, they're handed over, so they can't sort of just walk past them and not see them and not use them. So that's quite advantageous. There's also a bit of a cheerful smile at the end of it. So we think that's increased the uptake into those supplements. Because they're all in one room as well, we can kind of see if someone's taken them and just left them on the table, we can quickly open the box and see who has and hasn't been taking it. And that isn't a way of just saying, getting on players and saying, right, you've not taken it, using it as a reason to get angry or anything like that. It can be more of an educational tool. All right, so this player actually is not taking this. Informs the conversation as to why they're not doing it, and is it they just don't like pills? So can we look at different methods of offering that supplement, whether that be, I don't know, a drink, or whether it be hot chocolate, whatever it might be. So we can look at slightly different mediums of doing that. It all might be an education, they don't actually understand it. So we do have, so we've got information in and around our dining room area, either on the tables, on the blackboards behind where the players get the food from. We've also got TV screens that sort of give the schedule for the day, so people are always looking at it, and as it rotates through, it will have little tidbits of information around what the things they're taking, why they're taking it, what the benefits for, so that they're constantly getting that nudge, really. So that we hope to do that. And then other things that we kind of utilize in that respect are how things are set up. So post-training, and even in our home changing rooms, there's placements of fridges and places where we would hand out drinks or supplements that players go past. So in terms of that, there's an environmental nudge in order to try and promote the uptake of the nutrition support that they're given. Obviously, our guidelines change a little bit. Our objectives change from fueling for week-to-week training and matches to more of a focus on just trying to avoid detraining, and also to ensure that players come back ready for pre-season. So we're looking at reducing any loss in aerobic capacity. What else? Reducing decrements in sort of power, minimising increasing fat mass, which is one that you would traditionally expect during that off season, and also trying to reduce any reduction in lean mass, really. So we've got pretty specific outcomes or markers for things that we want to achieve in the off season. So we do recommend reduction in carbohydrate intake especially during the early off season, which is typically the time for rest and relaxation. So they typically get a couple of weeks of active recovery, so barely anything. But after that, they're kind of straight back into training again. So although it's not at the level that will be in season, we need to make sure that they're ready to go at the start of pre-season. So they're beginning to pick up training for the last 4 weeks of pre-season. So again, we have to make sure that they're fueling efficiently for that. So it's not a case of we just cut everything out for 6 weeks and hope they don't put weight on. It's trying to plan and periodize that accordance with what they're doing. It is a period of relaxation. You're surrounded by friends and family, and they do need that. They do need a period where they can switch off slightly. So what we need is an element of relaxation, but we just don't want excess. In season, a lot of the meals are provided for them, and they get sort of daily support and nudges and information. They've got 6 weeks where they're not getting that, so we need to try and make sure that in that in-season period, players are capable of looking after themselves when they're away from us. So we try and make them as self-sufficient as possible. We obviously always provide them with things to take with them. So again, working with them, where they're going on holiday, what they're doing, we provide them with the supplements to take with them, whether that be sort of the immune function ones or whether it be more performance-based ones. We obviously offer that support for them. Yeah, so in terms of working with nutritionists when they go away, some countries will have nutrition supports, others won't. We try and provide the players with the knowledge and information, and also we'll send players away with sort of supplements and nutrition packs. Our players are going away, and they might come back with some gold information, so try and catch up with the players when they come back. Is there anything that they found particularly useful when they were away that they particularly liked, and that we might be able to implement it with our own nutritional practices? So rather than thinking that ours is the be-all and end-all in terms of nutritional practice and they should do what we do when they go away, they might pick up some things that we're not doing, and we can try and link them into some of the practice that we do. So we do contact some of the international teams ahead with their fitness coaches. I'll obviously deal with them, and we give them a bit of an update on sort of their training plans, their gym programming, and also the nutritional elements of that. I think one thing that is a lot easier on the shorter international breaks, so September and October and March, when they go away on longer camps and tournaments, that they can be away for 4, 5, 6 weeks, and effectively at that point it's up there with their national teams. We're not across the ins and outs of food provision. We don't know what the hotels are providing. We're not across the training, and as such we just have to trust that the players have been sent with the information to make the right choices when they're in that position, because obviously we want them to do well when they're with us, and we also want them to do well when they're playing for their national teams.